Should the Saints consider drafting Ashton Jeanty? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a conversation I've had with myself probably once a day, every day. I'm not going to lie to you. I would never lie to you. Before this whole real draft process started with the combine, all these grades coming out and all that stuff, not that Jeanty's participating in the combine, but just now that we've got really ramped up into the draft, I've been doing my research. I'm not going to lie. I did not expect myself to be at the position to where I'm almost rooting for the Saints to draft Ashton Jeanty. If you had asked me 2 months ago, I would have said, why would you draft Ashton Jeanty? We have Alvin Kamara. Why? We have so many other holes. We have so many other positions of need, and just there's other good players in the draft. Why take a player that at least immediately is at best in a timeshare situation? But the more that's coming out, the more I think this might be the move. And we'll talk about that in this video today. So the backdrop is Mel Kiper's Draft 2.0. So we already covered this part. He has the Saints taking Tyler Warren. But I want to hear what he has to say about Ashton Jeanty. Now, he has Jeanty going to the Raiders. We'll ignore that part. We're just going to focus on Jeanty and what he brings to a team and the entire discussion around where he should be drafted.
Ashton Jeanty gives them, hey, Marshawn Lynch was with Pete. He drafted, last time I checked, he was there when they drafted Rashad Penny. Yep. Didn't turn out well, but he still took a running back in the first round there. I think if they find a quarterback like Sam, okay, and they go get the running back at 6, all of a sudden now, we're not debating Ashton. See, one thing here is, and I always argue this whole point, I'm defending the running backs here. Ashton Jeanty's 4th on my board. Where's he on your board, Field?
I've got him 4th as well, and I have more context on that in just a minute, but I want you to finish your thought first.
Hey, Field, how about you quit talking into an aluminum can, brother? BestBuy.com. Get a microphone. So this is kind of the debate, or lack of a debate, is everyone agrees Ashton Jeanty is super sweet. Everyone agrees he is the man. Everyone agrees he's high on the board, but he's a running back. And there's still this stigma of don't draft a running back high. I agree with that 5 years ago, but in today's NFL, that has shifted. Philosophy for sports, whether it's the NBA or MLB or NFL or NHL, philosophy shifts, and you have to pivot with how the game pivots. You can't just stick to one thing all the time. Example, fullback was not a position 2 years ago, right? No one used fullbacks anymore. It was all spread out, no need for them. Now it's shifting back to, actually, teams with a fullback, teams who can kind of pack the line of scrimmage, dominate the line of scrimmage, run the football, control the clock. All of a sudden, that's in vogue, right? So if you're just trying to force a West Coast passing, air raid, spread them out, 80-yard bombs down the field, if you're trying to force that and you don't accept change, your team's going to fall apart. All right, you have to be able to pivot and accept change. I think the NFL defenses have pivoted, and they've pivoted so far in stopping the deep ball and stopping the air raid attack that we saw the Chiefs so successful with a couple years ago. It has opened up this running game, and it's opened up teams that say, you know what? All right, we'll dink and dunk down the field. We'll be really good on 4th and 1, 4th and short, 3rd and 1, 3rd and short. We'll run the football. We'll have 14, 15 play drives. We'll chew up clock. There will be 4 possessions in the second half, and we'll win games. And that's it. And that's the offense. The offense is very simple. Passing is a lot of play action, a lot of levels, a lot of that kind of stuff, a little bit of motion here and there, but it's all relatively simple. So if that's the case, a player like Ashton Jeanty should be drafted very high. He shouldn't have that stigma of, he's a running back. Running backs don't matter anymore. Running back by committee, whatever. Draft him 20-something overall. We'll be good to go. I just don't think that's a thing anymore. So if we remove that stigma, why wouldn't you draft Ashton Jeanty?
And I checked around the league. Everybody's got him high. So what's the problem here? If everybody's going to argue with me about running backs and say I'm crazy, and I've been told I'm crazy about a lot of things, but mostly about my running back philosophy, which I think has been proven right. Okay, it has been proven.
Yeah, right. It has been.
It has been proven. So that's one thing they got to give me. But by the same token, they're saying
a lot of
running backs. Everybody's talking about Saquon Barkley. Look at the difference he made. He won a second team, right? But I get it. I've always valued running backs tremendously. That's why I say you can get the great ones 2nd through 7th round. But these guys are the elite running backs. These two are. They're both in Jeanty's case, ranked up very high on the ratings board. Okay, consensus, top guy. So if the league's saying I'm crazy and running backs are so valuable, which they are, and these guys are separated from the rest, why isn't Jeanty and Amari and Hampton up there? So for Jeanty to the Raiders, if people are screaming at me, you can get him in a second. That's what I've been saying. So it's almost like they want to argue with me when I say one thing, and then I do what the.
So another argument for why you wouldn't take Jeanty if you're the Saints. Another argument is, well, Saquon Barkley is good because he's got the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line. He's got their defense. He's got Jalen Hurts. He's got Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown on the outside. That's why Saquon is so good for the Eagles, because it's not all on him. He's not running behind a bad line. Anybody could do that, right? And to a certain extent, okay. To a certain extent, like, yeah, that's obviously the case. Like, Saquon is not running for 2,100 yards, and he's not dragging the Giants to the Super Bowl if he would have stayed with the Giants. But my counter argument to that is there a rule that you have to wait? Like, do you have to get the offensive line, then get the wide receivers, then get the defense, then get the quarterback, then you get the running back? I would say no. I would say you have to do some kind of opportunity cost algo to figure out, like, is Ashton Jeanty such a valuable prospect? Will he be such a good player? Will he be such a generational player that we cannot risk not getting him? Because there will not be another one of him in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. That's the question. And if you think that's the case, you take him now, and then you build your offensive line. You get your wide receivers. You get your quarterback, whatever else. I want to show you something real quick. So this is a tweet. There are only 4 players in the running back ZAP model with a score above 99. Todd Gurley, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, Christian McCaffrey. Ashton Jeanty currently is above 99. So he would be the 5th player ever above the 99 score on the ZAP model. Okay. That's the level we're talking about here. Now, that has guaranteed it translated to the NFL. I mean, Todd Gurley, it's batting 1,000 right now, right? Todd Gurley, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, Christian McCaffrey, high level, MVP level, best in the league level at certain times for Todd Gurley. So as far as this model goes, like, this is an undefeated, undisputed model. Now, will it always be undefeated, undisputed? We don't know about that. But this is an elite class to be in. And when I'm looking at the draft, and I'm looking at Ted McMillan, or I'm looking at, any of the defensive linemen, or Mason Graham even, or players like that, they all do have some unknown. Like, they all do have some, well, he could be this, but his floor is kind of like this. Ashton Jeanty seems to be the guy where everything is pointing to, no, he's going to be really, really good. He has somehow become, in my mind, the most sure thing at a position that right now is as valuable as it's been in the last decade.
The league, I think, will do. They're arguing with me on the point that, you can get one from the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round on. Why would you do that? So I can't win on this, it seems like, bottom line. But Ashton Jeanty, if the Raiders do get the quarterback like Sam Darnold, could go this route. If they don't, then Shedeur Sanders. I got a pen right here. This is the pen, right? This is what I'm Shedeur and pen, the Tom Brady connection. Yeah. Okay. No issue there. You take Shedeur Sanders if you're the Raiders. You lost the quarterback last year, and you may have to move up a spot or two to guarantee the acquisition of Shedeur if Sam Darnold doesn't end up what are they? Las Vegas Raider.
Yeah. Well, I guess we had the asked and answered right there. Is Brett Hoffman said, why on earth would the Raiders pass on Shedeur Sanders? Again, to be clear, Mel would have this in a Sam Darnold to Las Vegas scenario. You asked me where I have Ashton Jeanty ranked on the big board, Mel, and I said I had him 4th. I believe, Mel, and again, I was talking about this earlier, that bucket, right? Like this bucket of players. So I think the top bucket of players is 3 or 4 players at most in this year's class. Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Mason Graham, Ashton Jeanty is the way that I categorize those 4 players. And I bring this up, Mel, because the gap between 1 and 2 can be different than the gap between 4 and 5, even though it's just one integer apart, right?
Yeah, he's talking about kind of what I preach with the draft, where there are levels to the players. Like, just because you have the 5th pick or the 6th pick doesn't mean you're getting a player of almost equal value. There can be a huge difference. Drafting, Justin Jefferson 3rd. I'm just going to make random players up. Drafting Justin Jefferson 3rd and then drafting, who's like a decent Carl Granderson 4th. It's like, well, one is good. Like Carl Granderson's good, but one is like the next level of good. The league impacting, league changing level. Drafting Aaron Donald 8 and then drafting an above average defensive lineman 9th, huge difference, right? If you can find those players wherever they are in the draft, doesn't have to be in the top 10. They happen all over the place. Like Patrick Mahomes wasn't a top 5 pick, right? So they happen everywhere. Puka Nacua wasn't even drafted in the first 4 rounds. Finding those league-changing, game-changing, team-changing, high-impact, all-pro, MVP, Rookie of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, finding those guys, that's the goal. The goal isn't fill your position sheet. The goal isn't to, go down your position of needs and just check boxes. The goal is to get as many impactful players as possible on cheap contracts. That is the goal.
So I think it's important to note that while Ashton Jeanty plays a position where you can find a lot of great options in this year's draft class, and while the Raiders, if they don't have a quarterback, are in a major, major pile of trouble if they draft a running back 6 overall and run it back with Aiden O'Connell or something like that, given the circumstances you laid out, I understand the pick. I had Jeanty going far too low in my last mock draft relative to my rankings. We just don't know if the league at a position that has traditionally been devalued, even if we saw great years from Saquon and Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs this past season on new teams. Keep in mind, those 3 guys were also in the league the year prior, and all their teams, the Titans, the Giants, and the Raiders, stunk to high heaven. So oftentimes a great running back can kind of be more the icing on the cake than it can the straw that stirs the drink towards long-term sustained success.
That's certainly, again, that's kind of the question you have to ask yourself. Like, one, do you think running backs are as valuable as right now they're perceived to be, or was it just kind of a perfect storm? Then you have to decide, is it worth it to get a running back until you have the cake, as Field mentioned it? Like, do you need the offensive line? Do you need the quarterback? Do you need the water? Do you need everything first and then get your running back? Like, those are the questions you have to ask. My theory is that we might be in a pivot. My theory is that we might be a little early on the pivot back to running backs. That's kind of where you're at. Like, would you rather have Justin Jefferson and Ramondre Stevenson? Or would you rather have Saquon Barkley and Rashid Shaheed? It's like, I don't know. It's closer than, and, I think Ramondre Stevenson is probably a better running back than Shaheed is a receiver. But it's a little more skewed now. That conversation, that question is a little more skewed now than it has been in a long time.
Before we get to pick 7 in New York Jets, I will say this so everybody's out there aware of where the running backs are ranked.
Yep.
And you tell me as well what you think. I have Jeanty at 4. I just was checking. Jeanty at 4. Yep. Amarion Hampton at 19. My next running back is Caleb Johnson right now out of Iowa. He's at 45 because the big board is 25 on ESPN.com, but we all have our ratings up there. It's like 200-300 players. 45 is Caleb Johnson. So that goes, you think about it. 4.
Yep.
The number 1 running
19.
back. 19 for the number 2 running back, Hampton. 3 is at 45. That's Caleb Johnson, Iowa. Yeah. So just put that in context and realize why guys may go where they are. And there's a host of other running backs in that 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th round range. 30 running backs, I think 31 or 32 right now have draftable grades for me. Where do you have Hampton on your board right now?
So we'll get off the Hampton talk, but I don't know. I mean, I'm like, now granted, if Graham or someone like that fell, I think he's enough of a combination of super valuable player, great player, dominant player, and a position of need. I think you would take like Graham over Jeanty. Obviously, like if Abdul Carter fell or whatever. But some of these other guys, like I just don't know if filling a need. Like on some of the defensive linemen, this draft is so defensive lineman deep. I think you can get some stud edge players, stud defensive linemen in the 2nd round, 2nd, 3rd round. We've got 2 picks in the 3rd round. So, if you take Jeanty first, you spend your next couple of picks on the defensive line and possibly the offensive line or a receiver or whatever, you end up with, a Savion Williams or a Trey Harris or something like that later on. I just think you can wiggle around at the end, get value, get good players. And I'm just starting to get worried that Jeanty may be generational is generational is a lot, but if Jeanty can be Bijan or Jahmyr Gibbs or any of these guys, and him and Alvin can be that 1-2 punch that we saw with Alvin and Mark Ingram, and Alvin's on a 2-year deal where, okay, if Alvin 1-2 punch and then we hand it over to Jeanty, I could live with that. And we keep talking about how you got to have like everything in place for the running back, but you could also argue that having a Jeanty and Kamara would really help our quarterback situation, would take some pressure off of our wide receivers, and our offensive line is built to run block. Our offensive line with Taliese Fuaga, with Trevor Penning really coming around last year, especially in the running game. I'm not saying we go full zone run like we did with Kubiak, but our offensive line is kind of, or it's not even kind of, they are way better at run blocking than they are pass blocking. So getting Jeanty and really relying on Kamara and Jeanty, and you allow Penning and Fuaga to keep doing what they're good at, you lean on that while you try and figure out who's the quarterback. You try and figure out, you take some pressure off Carr. Carr is the quarterback this year, but as far as like the future, take some pressure off Carr. Carr all of a sudden just has to exist in this offense instead of carry the offense. Carr can do a lot of play action. Carr can, keep things tight. He can just kind of manage the game, make the throw when he has to. It's not on his shoulders to win the game. The more I think about it, ladies and gentlemen, the more that I'm really leaning towards Ashton Jeanty at 9. And I did not think I would be there, but Jeanty's not working out at the Combine. This Combine is a weird one where a lot of people are not working out. Mason Graham's not working out. Abdul Carter's injured. There's a lot of people. I think Cam Ward's not throwing. Shedeur Sanders isn't throwing. They're all throwing to their pro day. So the NFL can't be happy about that. But, yeah, it's worth a conversation, and the draft's coming up in a couple of months here. So very excited for that, and we'll know what to do. But as of right now, if I had to pick, I would go with Ashton Jeanty, which is, again, I'm surprising myself. Get on down in the comments below. Let me know what you think. What would you take? Would you take Jeanty or wait on a running back? Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.